My players had arrived in the city of Caervallon, ready to meet with the head of a temple called the Tower of the Lightbringer. The party cleric had once worshipped here, but was cast out after attacking one of his fellow priests who was contributing to corruption in the church. He had made it clear to the other players how much he hated that guy, now head of the order, and joked that they should attack him on sight. And unfortunately for me, that's what they did. Upon meeting the man, the party's rogue immediately opened fire with their crossbow. I clarified that's what she wanted to do. She did, and all hell broke loose. The priest fled, guards were called, and just like that, most of the players, a few had escaped before things got bad, were being hauled off to jail. To be clear, the rogue hadn't done anything wrong. She genuinely thought it was time to throw down. But the die had been cast, literally and figuratively. Needless to say, that's not how I planned for this session to go. My mind was racing in a million different directions, trying to figure out how to move forward. Would they have to break their friends out of jail? Was this quest done for? Would they flee town? To make matters worse, the evil priest had a bigger role to play in the overall story of the campaign. My players didn't know it yet, but he was working with the big bad organization they were trying to stop. And in that moment, it felt like this entire arc was hanging by a thread. If you've run the game long enough, you've probably had a session like this one. Your players do something you never saw coming, things don't go to plan, and now your campaign is going off the rails. Of course, D&D will never go 100% how you expect. It would be really boring if it did. But most DMs have some sort of framework to keep their players on task and moving in a direction they're ready for. We're humans after all. You can only prepare so much, and most people can't improvise everything they come across, myself included. So it's easy to panic in these moments and think that all of your notes need to be tossed in the trash. If you're in a session that's going way off course, don't chuck that prep just yet. Everything can still be salvaged. In this video, I'm going to outline 4 steps that can help you whenever your players take a left turn and you expect them to go right. Following this process will help you steady the ship, keep your story moving, and honor the choices they've made. Without further ado, let's get started. The first step is simple. You need to survive the session. Sometimes your players do something crazy right at the end of game time, in which case, great. Describe whatever insane thing they've done, hold back your tears, and end the session. Congratulations, you have until the next one to figure things out. But it's just as likely that your players will derail things at the beginning of your game, or right in the middle. If that's the case, you have to roll with the punches. This is by far the hardest step, and it gets easier the longer you played and the more you've DM'd, but even if you've never dealt with your players getting way off script before, there are a few universal things you can do that'll help smooth things over. First off, there's no need to just blurt out the very first thing you can think of when deciding what happens next. You're not a computer. At least, you're probably not. Can't always tell with AI these days. But it's okay to break for 5 or 10 minutes while you decide how best to go forward with whatever crazy thing your players have done. Let them use the bathroom, get snacks, whatever, while you think about the next logical step. And oftentimes, getting your players involved in that decision making will help lighten the load on you. Rather than trying to dictate where they go next, see what their idea of a plan is. For example, say your party decided to murder the potion maker who was going to be a quest giver. They flee the inn where they were meeting. Now what? Well, ask them where they want to go or what they want to do. They might have other business in town to conclude, or maybe they want to hit the road and find work elsewhere. Or perhaps they had motives for taking them out you didn't even realize, like trying to claim their now ownerless business. And if they messed up in a very public way, then see how they plan to rectify things. Running from guards, collecting lost items, freeing captured friends. It'll be up to them to clean up their mess, not you. And while they're plotting and planning amongst themselves, you can be thinking about how the world responds to whatever they've just done. So let them lead things for a bit. And if possible, you can always introduce whatever you had prepared in other ways. If that alchemist was about to tell them about the corrupt guard captain collecting protection fees, maybe they instead witness some of the thugs in action when they go to the shop to loot it later. Combat is another great way to fill a session when your prep isn't really relevant anymore. Your players decided not to visit the town they've been talking about for weeks and instead want to go in a completely new direction? Well, looks like they're facing some roadside bandits while you figure out what to do next. Or maybe the party broke into the first store they came across in broad daylight and were instantly caught. Roll initiative and see if they can outrun the town guards that are entering the scene. Getting things into initiative slows down the pace of play, gives your players something to focus on, and you can take some time to figure out your next step while the dice start flying. And honestly, if your friends have done something so crazy and out of left field that you truly don't know how to move forward at the moment, there's no shame in calling the session for the night. You can admit that they really caught you off guard and that you'll need to take some time to reset and prepare for whatever new direction things have taken. When my rogue shot that evil priest, I stayed calm and did what made sense. I had guards called to the scene, and not wanting to escalate it further, my players agreed to be taken into custody. The rogue decided to escape, so she picked the locks on her handcuffs and managed to get away. The others were brought to a nearby jail, where they worked on breaking out. The druid and wizard used magic to free themselves, but unfortunately, our cleric was knocked out and taken to a more secure facility. The rest of the time was spent by the party regrouping, getting their things from the inn they had checked into before guards could confiscate them, and trying to get a little more info on the evil priest and their goings-on. Just like that, we were done playing, and I had survived, mostly by letting my friends dictate how they wanted to proceed. Once the dust had settled and I'd finished the session, I needed to assess the damage. Now that you can breathe again, it's time to analyze. How far off the rails have things gone? Is your prep totally useless now, or can it be salvaged? Even when it feels like your players have done something that changes everything, you might be surprised to find that actually, things haven't changed much at all. For instance, say your party was supposed to investigate a secret cult that's been performing dark rituals all throughout the city. Unfortunately, they decided to set off one of their dark artifacts, destroying a neighborhood and labeling themselves as outlaws. It might seem like you'll have to change up everything you had planned, but in truth, they can still complete that quest. They'll just need to be a bit quieter than before. And hey, if they apprehend the cultists now, they could get the city to clear them of any wrongdoing. Win-win. That's not to say you'll never have to mix things up. Part of the step is figuring out what aspects of your story do need to be rewritten or remade. If they chose to up and leave the city and are halfway to a new town when the session ends, then that cult plot might not work anymore. But by taking a moment to assess the state of the game and see what exactly has to be different and what things can stay the same, you'll save yourself a lot of time and energy that would be spent stressing and redoing plot points and combat encounters that were probably still fine. As a final note of caution, be honest with yourself about whether or not your players want to engage with an adventure. It's one thing if they skip the quest giver, get run out of town before starting, or miss the hook altogether, but if your players flat out reject something, don't decide to force them down that path anyway. You can try to make it more enticing by promising better rewards or connecting it to one of their backstories, but part of your analysis should be whether or not this content is worth keeping, or if it's better to move on to something new. Once I had logged off Roll20 and decompressed after that wild session, I took a look at this arc of my campaign to see what, if anything, I could keep. And in truth, I really didn't have to alter much. My party was still in town, hiding with an ally, the big boss priest was still their enemy, even more so now, and they would eventually need to break into the tower to defeat him. Overall, the broad strokes of the mission and NPCs were still fine to be used as I had planned. Of course, I did identify a few problems I had to solve. I had to do something with the player now being kept behind bars, as well as ensure my party understood that this evil priest was connected to the overall story, so they didn't just skip town. But all in all, I was in pretty good shape. Once you've analyzed the situation and figured out what does in fact need some updating, you can move on to the next step. You've survived the session, discovered what parts of your prep can stay the same, and now it's time to make some changes. Before you whip out a pen and write a completely new storyline, start with looking at what you have already made and seeing if it can be adapted to fit the new direction the campaign is going. You might find that with only a few small updates, you're already set to go for the next session. Your players decided to skip town rather than explore the dungeon you had in the city crypts. Well, maybe that's now an ancient temple in the forest they're trekking through, with all the vital plot info you need. You just might have to change the look and feel of it to fit the woods rather than the city. Or perhaps they never met the friendly librarian you wanted to kick off the next leg of their journey. Looks like she's now a traveling scholar, ready to meet them on the road. Reimagining the things you already have prepped will save you a lot of time and energy. This is also a great point to figure out how to weave your players' choices into the narrative. You want the world to feel like it reacts to the party's decisions, and that the actions they take have real consequences. Making changes to your prep that reflect what they've done will keep it from feeling like they're being railroaded into the same encounters without any of their choices actually mattering. And those changes don't have to be huge either. Even small consequences can feel big when they come up later. Looking at those previous examples, maybe this new temple has some of the info they need, but their enemies recover parts of it they would have found in the crypts, advancing their own plans. Or sure, the librarian is a traveling scholar now, but she learns about your party's less than stellar reputation after being run out of town, and decides to betray them instead of paying once the quest is complete. Your players can still have a hand in shaping the story, without you having to get rid of everything you've already worked on. Going back to my own scenario, the rogue had decided to track an NPC at the very end of the session, which they assumed was an artificer they'd been told worked with the corrupt clerics. I'd actually planned for them to be a completely different character, but seeing an opportunity to get my players back on track, I made them the magical engineer instead. A simple change, but now I had an easy way for them to discover information on the temple and learn why they needed to stick around and stop them. Speaking of which, I was going to have the villain reveal his connection to the main bad guys during the final boss fight of the arc, but now I wanted something for my imprisoned player to do while they waited for their friends to save them. so I used their jail time as a perfect opportunity to have them meet with their rival, where the evil priest could gloat about joining the evil organization and give our cleric a chance for some role-playing. With just a couple simple changes, I was starting to feel a lot better about where things were heading, though there were still a few notes I needed to work on in order to feel fully prepared, and that's the final step. Once you've identified which holes in the narrative can be filled with your existing prep, it's time to paper over the rest. Sometimes you're going to have to create new scenarios, challenges, and characters to fit the choices your players made. There will be days when your players go so far off course that you have to scrap what you've been preparing completely and start again. It happens, and honestly, it'll usually lead to something better as you honor the choices your party is committed to. But for the most part, if you've been following these steps, you can usually stick to your overall plan, with a couple new additions. This is where you could write in new NPCs to replace those your players have offended, alienated, or killed. You can draw up factions that can help your party get out of whatever sticky situation they're in. For a price, of course. You could plan out a dungeon that fits the new path they've chosen, but still contains the artifact you were hoping they'd pick up in the one they chose to skip. You get the picture. By narrowing it down to just problems you can't solve otherwise, you'll be a lot more efficient with your time than if you'd canned the whole thing. For me and my party, the biggest thing I had to create was a prison. I'd come up with a little jail on the fly to hold my guilty players, but with one still captured, I wanted to make getting them out a more involved scenario. So I designed a prison that was harder to escape from, and much more fun to deal with. By the time we gathered to play again, despite the chaos of our last meetup, I was ready to go. It took 4 more sessions of gameplay to get it all done, but my party managed to free their cleric, defeat the evil priest, and get out of town before being caught again. It was fun, exciting, and yes, at times stressful, but even when it seems like your campaign is going down in flames, you can always get things back on track. With some changes, of course. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully these steps can help you next time your party takes things in bold new directions. So every other session or so. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like is always appreciated, and you should consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make videos all about D&D, DMing, and everything in between, so there's more to come. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.